When working in any type of industry, there are levels of roles. For example, you have analysts, managers, senior managers, and directors. So when working in the AML industry, to make sure you are running effectively, you have 3 lines of defence that keep you right on track in prevention of money laundering. But what are those 3 lines of defence? And how do they help combat money laundering? In today's video, we will be taking a look at what are the 3 lines of defence in AML, how do the 3 lines of defence fit into an effective AML program, and what happens if we don't have the 3 lines of defence. Hello, and welcome to another KYC Lookup video where we bring you AML related content to help you enhance your knowledge in the fight against money laundering. Before diving into today's video, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. Oh, and don't forget to leave us a comment with any suggested topics you would like us to cover in the future. So, on to today's video. What are the 3 lines of defence in AML? The 3 lines of defence is a widely used model in the anti-money laundering AML industry that helps organisations to minimise the risk of financial crime such as money laundering and terrorist financing. Each line of defence plays a unique role in identifying and mitigating these risks. The 3 lines of defence consist of the operational management, the compliance management, and finally the internal audit. Let's look at each one more closely. The first line of defence is operational management. This line of defence includes the individuals who are responsible for carrying out day-to-day business activities, such as customer service representatives, loan officers, and tellers. Operational management is responsible for identifying and managing risk associated with their activities, such as verifying customer identities and reporting suspicious transactions. They also work closely with compliance personnel to ensure that they are following all applicable laws and regulations. The second line of defence is compliance management. This line of defence includes individuals responsible for developing and implementing AML policies and procedures, conducting risk assessments, and monitoring compliance with laws and regulations. Compliance personnel work closely with operational management to ensure they are following all applicable laws and regulations and to identify potential risks associated with their activities. The third line of defence is internal audit. This line of defence includes internal auditors who are responsible for evaluating the effectiveness of AML compliance programs and procedures. Internal auditors provide an independent assessment of AML compliance and the effectiveness of controls that have been implemented to mitigate risk. They also ensure that the AML compliance program and procedures are aligned with regulatory requirements and industry best practices. Each line of defence plays a critical role in identifying and mitigating risk associated with financial crimes. By working together, they can help organisations to develop effective AML compliance programs that minimise the risk of financial crimes. The 3 lines of defence model provides a clear and structured framework for managing AML risk and helps organisations to ensure that they are following all applicable laws and regulations. How does the 3 lines of defence fit into an effective AML programme? The 3 lines of defence model provides a clear and structured framework for managing AML risk and ensuring compliance with laws and regulations. By establishing effective training and education programs, implementing robust policies and procedures, and conducting regular audits and assessments, organisations can minimise the risk of financial crimes and protect themselves and their customers from the harmful effects of money laundering and terrorist financing. What happens if we didn't have the 3 lines of defence? If we didn't have the 3 lines of defence in anti-money laundering, AML, it would be much more difficult for organisations to effectively manage and mitigate the risk associated with financial crime, such as money laundering and terrorist financing. Without the 3 lines of defence, AML compliance programmes would be less structured and less effective in preventing financial crimes. Here are some potential consequences of not having the 3 lines of defence in AML. Increased risk of financial crimes. The absence of a clear and structured framework for managing AML risk would increase the risk of financial crimes. Without the first line of defence, operational management, verifying customer identities and reporting suspicious transaction, the risk of money laundering would increase. Without the second line of defence, compliance management, development and implementing AML policies and procedures, conducting risk assessments, and monitoring compliance with laws and regulations, organisations would be less equipped to manage AML risks. And without the third line of defence, internal audit, evaluating the effectiveness of AML compliance programmes and procedures, organisations would have no independent assessment of their AML compliance. Increased regulatory scrutiny. Without the 3 lines of defence in AML, organisations would be more likely to face regulatory scrutiny and penalties for non-compliance. Regulators expect organisations to have effective AML compliance programmes in place, and the absence of the 3 lines of defence would make it more difficult for organisations to meet regulatory expectations. This could lead to fines, reputational damage, and loss of business. Decreased customer confidence. If organisations were not effectively managing AML risks, customers may lose confidence in the organisation's ability to protect their financial assets. This could lead to decreased business and revenue. And increased operational costs. Without the 3 lines of defence in AML, organisations would likely have to spend more money on managing AML risks. This could include increased staffing costs for compliance and internal audit functions, increased regulatory fines and penalties, and increased costs associated with reputational damage. In conclusion, the 3 lines of defence model is a critical component of an effective AML programme. Without the 3 lines of defence, organisations would be less equipped to manage anti-money laundering risks, which could lead to increased financial crime, regulatory scrutiny, decreased customer confidence, and increased operational costs. Synchronising the 3 lines of defence. Synchronising the 3 lines of defence is a critical component of an effective AML anti-money laundering programme. Governance and reporting play a central role in ensuring that the 3 lines of defence work together to mitigate AML risks. Here are a few ways of the 3 lines of defence working together effectively. Establish clear roles and responsibilities. Each line of defence should have clear roles and responsibilities that are well defined and understood by all stakeholders. This includes identifying who is responsible for what functions and ensuring that there is no overlap or duplication of efforts. Develop effective communication channels. Effective communication channels are essential for synchronising the 3 lines of defence. This includes establishing clear reporting protocols and channels, as well as regular coordination meetings to review risk assessment, incidents, and remediation efforts. Establish shared risk assessment methodologies. Shared risk assessment methodologies ensure that all stakeholders are aligned in their approach of risk management. This includes using consistent criteria to identify, assess, and prioritise risk across the 3 lines of defence. Implement a common set of metrics. Metrics are critical for measuring the effectiveness of AML programmes and identifying areas for improvement. Developing a common set of metrics across the 3 lines of defence ensures that all stakeholders are working towards the same goals and objectives. And leverage technology solutions. Technology solutions such as data analytics and artificial intelligence can help synchronise the 3 lines of defence by providing real-time insights and automating certain processes. For example, data analytics can be used to identify patterns and anomalies in transaction data, while artificial intelligence can be used to automate certain compliance processes. Challenges in synchronising the 3 lines of defence. Communication breakdowns. Communication breakdowns can occur when stakeholders are not communicating effectively, or where there is a lack of alignment of objectives and priorities. This can lead to delays in identifying and mitigating risk and can result in regulatory fines or reputational damage. Overlapping roles and responsibilities. Overlapping roles and responsibilities can occur when there is a lack of clarity around who is responsible for what functions. This can lead to duplication of efforts or gaps in coverage, which can result in increased AML risks. And misalignment of priorities. Misalignment of priorities can occur when stakeholders have different objectives, or when there is a lack of alignment between the 3 lines of defence. For example, operational controls may focus on efficiency, while compliance oversight may focus on adherence to regulatory requirements. In conclusion, synchronising the 3 lines of defence in AML is essential for effective risk management and compliance. Best practices for synchronising the 3 lines of defence include establishing clear roles and responsibilities, developing effective communication channels, establishing shared risk assessment methodologies, implementing a common set of metrics, and leveraging technology solutions. However, challenges such as communication breakdowns, overlapping roles and responsibilities, and misalignment of priorities can hinder effective coordination. By addressing these challenges and implementing best practices, organisations can improve their AML programme and reduce the risk of regulatory fines or reputational damage. Well, there you have it. What are the 3 lines of defence in AML? How does the 3 lines of defence fit into an effective AML programme? And what happens if we didn't have the 3 lines of defence? Please let us know in the comments section your thoughts on the effectiveness of the 3 lines of defence and any other topics you would like us to cover in the future. We have now launched our very own courses for you to take a more in-depth look at a variety of subjects, such as Introduction to AML, Beneficial Ownership, and Customer Risk Rating, for example. So make sure you visit our website for further details and let us help you connect the dots in KYC. Thank you for watching the video, and if you made it this far, don't forget to like and subscribe to watch more amazing videos.